My name is John Peros. I'm the Technical Product Manager for Enterprise PDM here at Hawk Ridge Systems. I handle a lot of the marketing stuff, a lot of pre-sales demonstrations. Those of you who have Enterprise right now, you may have already met me before or in the past. And really the idea behind these e-learning seminars is just to show you how to do stuff inside Enterprise PDM that you may not know how to do already. So today we're going to be focusing on the automatic deliverable creation, which, like I said, things that you would be giving your customers, prints or PDFs or e-drawings files, things of that nature. Enterprise PDM has a really good engine inside of it for creating those things automatically. So that's kind of what we want to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring up my admin tool. So obviously my EPDM admin tool right here, this is where I do most of the configuring for these kinds of things. But really, the first step to this is to see if your vault has the task add-ins loaded already. So in order to create these automatic PDFs and things like that, SOLIDWORKS actually gives us a little add-in that we can run inside Enterprise PDM, and that add-in has to be loaded. Now, it may be loaded in your vault, it may not be loaded, but there's a really easy way to check. So if you log into your vault right here, over in the left-hand side, you're going to see that little node for add-ins. You want to go ahead and expand that node and look at what add-ins you may have loaded into the vault already. Now I've got two add-ins here, an add references add-in and a dispatch add-in. Neither of those are the add-in that's going to control the automatic PDF generation or anything like that. So what we want to do here is get that loaded up. You're looking for something, it's called the SW task add-in. And so if you need to add that into your vault, it's actually fairly easy. What you can do is right-click on the top level of your vault, and then you're going to see a little thing that says import. Okay, so we want to bring up that import window. And when you get this import window up, you want to browse to the area where this is going to be stored. So to find these files, you go to your C drive. Then on your C drive, you're going to go to Program Files. Inside Program Files, you're going to see a folder called SOLIDWORKS Enterprise PDM. Inside SOLIDWORKS Enterprise PDM, you're going to see a default data folder. And in that default data folder are all these different types of files that we can import. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, what you're going to see is a convert task and a print task. Okay, so depending on which task you want to run inside the vault is which one of these you're going to choose. So I'm going to grab that convert task. It's a .cex file, which is an enterprise export file. And we're just going to hit open. Okay, what you'll see is that it'll say the import is completed. Hopefully you don't get an error here. Once your import is completed, you can hit OK. And if we go back and we refresh that add-ins now, you're going to see I had the third add-in, which is the SW task add-in. That is what's driving these conversion and these print tasks inside Enterprise PDM. What you also got added to your vault at that point is if you go down to your tasks bar, you will see that there is a convert task added. Now, just so that I can cover all situations here, I'm going to delete that convert task. And I'm going to show you what you would do to create a new task. So this would be if you had the SW task add-in there already, you didn't have to import it, and you wanted to create a new task and you don't have any tasks listed. So to create a new task, what you're going to do is right-click on the tasks node, and you're going to be able to choose new task. And this is going to bring up a very simple interface inside Enterprise PDM. Basically, it needs to know what the name is and what task you're going to try to run. So something that's very popular out there in the industry is creating PDFs. I pretty much have never been to a company that doesn't create a PDF of their final release drawings. So I'm going to use that as my main example today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this task convert to PDF. Okay. Once I've given it a name, I have to choose which add-in I'm actually going to use to trigger this. And so I'm going to use that SOLIDWORKS task add-in. Now it's very possible that you guys can create tasks based on other add-ins. If you have API capabilities and can do some custom programming, you could create your own add-ins that will expand upon this. Maybe it does something beyond convert or print. That's really going to be up to you guys in terms of what your capabilities are. This, like I said, is pre-provided by SOLIDWORKS already. So once I get the add-in loaded, you can see that my interface has changed a little bit. I have a lot more options here. The first option is, am I going to use an input card? So if this task actually required the user to input some sort of information, you would be able to generate a card inside Enterprise PDM to gather that information. In our case, since we're really just generating a PDF off of a drawing file, there's really no reason for us to use an input card, so we're going to leave that blank right now. The next option is, how do you want to execute the task? Are you going to execute the task as a logged in user, or do you want to provide specific credentials that are going to be used? For example, if I chose to execute this task as the admin user, no matter who I was logged into the Vault as, for this specific task, it would use the admin credentials. An example of why you may want to do this is, here we're generating a PDF. So say that our final PDF is going to end up in the manufacturing folder. But in the manufacturing folder of our Vault, only specific people have access to actually put files there, but you want to allow multiple people access to generate the PDFs. In that case, you may want to use a user here that has access to the manufacturing folder so that you don't get errors. In our case, I'm going to leave it as execute as logged in user, but remember you can always come back and change that if necessary. And then kind of the last part on this first step is, how many times do you want to retry this task before it errors out completely? So there's lots of reasons that the task could error. In my case right now, I'm not going to do any retries, but I could set this up to do 3 or 10 retries, and I can even control the individual time spacing between those retries, depending on what my company's criteria may be. Okay? So if we go down to the next step over on the left-hand side, it's execution method. And this is very important. This is, where do you want the task to run? So something that we should put out there now is that for these tasks to actually run, they have to use SOLIDWORKS. So to take a SOLIDWORKS drawing and convert that drawing to a PDF or an e-drawing or whatever you may want to do, it has to actually run SOLIDWORKS in the background. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have SOLIDWORKS on every computer, because what you're doing right here in the execution method screen is you're setting up what computers this is allowed to run in. You'll notice here that in the center, it talks about the task host configuration. So in your little toolbar by the clock, we are all probably familiar with our blueberry icon. If you right-click on that blueberry icon, you'll get this task host configuration option, and then you can turn the computer on to be a task host. And what that means is that if that computer is needed, SOLIDWORKS can open in the background, do what it needs to do, and then close. So right now I don't have any computers supporting this particular task, so I'm going to go turn that on. If I right-click on the Enterprise PDM Blueberry and bring up the task host configuration, this is the screen that you will see. Notice that the vault I'm currently dealing with is selected in the upper right-hand corner, and this is the task that I may want this computer to be able to support. So I just put a little check mark in the permit window. I'm going to hit OK, and if I refresh the list, you'll see now that my computer is available to support this task. You may have 20 different computers that are available to support this task, and if you do, you need to tell the task how to choose which computer. So if you choose the first option, which is let the system choose, it's going to go and look for the computer that's the least stressed right now. So the computer that's idle or the computer that's running the minimal stuff. Okay? If you choose the second option, which is prompt the user to choose the computer where the task is initiated, it'll give them a screen and allow them to choose which computer the task is going to run on. And then the third option, execute on the computer where the task is initiated, that's going to require that the task is initiated on a computer that has SOLIDWORKS and can support the task. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave mine as let the system choose. That tends to be the most popular option. What you have to understand, and this is a little caveat to this tool, if you have SOLIDWORKS installed on a server and you're going to use that server to support the task, the server has to be logged into Enterprise PDM 100% of the time. If the server is not logged into Enterprise PDM, it will not be able to complete the task. So you'll have to have that server logged in constantly if you want it to be able to run tasks in the background. Just something to keep in mind when you're setting these things up. Okay, the next option right here is a menu command. So when we're talking about these tasks, we have two ways to invoke them. The first is a menu command, which means that I can go to a file in Enterprise, I can right-click on it, and I'm going to have a command to execute this task. And I'm going to turn this on. So we put a check mark to display the menu command, and then you type in what you want the command to be. So our command will be convert to PDF. I can put in a little status bar option so that if people hover over it, they're going to get a little text field that shows them what exactly is doing. Converts the selected file to PDF. And then this runs on SOLIDWORKS files only. So I'll put a little warning in there. SOLIDWORKS files only. And that's what they'll see for our menu command. Okay. Now the next little option over here on the left-hand side is the script. And so what happens here is you can choose a couple of things in terms of, okay, do I want to use a specific SOLIDWORKS version? So if I had multiple versions of SOLIDWORKS installed on my computer, should this be done in a specific version, or do you just want to use the default, which means the last SOLIDWORKS version open? Also, what kind of task do I want to run? I've got a general task, which is what we see now, where I could insert a macro from SOLIDWORKS that did something, or I can run a file conversion task or a print task. So I'm going to change the task user interface to file conversion because that's what we want to do. But if I wanted to automatically print a drawing, I could bring up the print interface. So I'll go grab file conversion, and I get a little warning here saying that I need to close the task and reopen it because it's going to load a new task interface. So we'll hit OK on that. We'll close the task. We're going to come back and reopen it. And we'll see that we've got some more different options here in the left-hand side, more geared towards the file conversion task. So if we go back to menu command, we've got everything set there in our menu command. And so the next little option is the conversion settings. What kind of file do you want to convert to, and how do you want that conversion to run? So if we come in here, output file format could be prompt the user, or you could say, no, we only want this to convert to a PDF. So within these tasks, you can be very loose with your specifications, or you can be very stringent with your specifications. I can create a task that runs completely in the background with no user interaction, or I can create a task that puts out a bunch of pop-up menus to ask the user exactly what they want to do. I prefer to have tasks that run in the background with no interaction because there's less chance of something getting messed up. So that's what I'm going to gear this towards, but keep in mind I'm going to point out all the options that you can do to change this. So basically, if you want a task to run with no user interaction, anytime you see something like this option, allow the user to change this setting, you need to turn that off. So there's a couple places we want to turn that off on this particular area of the vault. The first is under configurations. We're going to say output all configurations, don't allow the user to change this. The second is the sheets tab. We want to output all sheets if you have a multi-sheet drawing. We do not want to allow the user to change that. And we also want to create one file that includes all sheets. So you can create one file per sheet or one file that's every sheet. I like to have everything in a single file, so I'll turn that on. Again, unchecking allow the user to change this setting. And then the last thing is, which version of the source file do you want to use? We're going to use the latest version, and we do not want to allow the user to change that setting. Now up top, you're going to see a button called Conversion Options, and this is just to set the options. So if you were in SOLIDWORKS and you went File, Save As, PDF, you're going to have some conversion options. This is the exact same screen right here. Should we export the PDF in color? Does it need to be high quality? Yeah. Do we need a header, footer? All that stuff. And this is going to change depending on which type of output you had. So if I was going to put this out as an e-drawings, you can see that my conversion options are different. Do I want to enable measure? Do we want to allow STL export? All that stuff depending on the particular file type that you're choosing to export. So we'll go back to PDF, make sure all that is set, which it is. And then on the next stage here, we get to choose what we want to show up on the file card for the PDF. So here, we've got all this information on the SOLIDWORKS file card, and we need to choose if we want to transfer that information to the file card associated with this new PDF file. If you want to transfer some of that information, it's very easy to do. You hit Add Variable, and you can take things from one card to the other. So the source may be, maybe we have a description on the SOLIDWORKS drawing card. So we want to take that description and we want to map it to some variable on the PDF card. Now for the most part, your source variable and your destination variable are going to be the same. However, there may be instances where they don't match, and that's absolutely fine. So maybe we're going to add the description variable, and we want to make sure that we capture the revision variable as well. So I'll go and I'll grab both of those, make sure everything is synced up under here. And like I said, if you wanted to add more information, you could add as much as you needed to do. Okay, so we got that set up. Go to the next page, which is Output File Details. And this is basically asking us where we want to put this file. And you have two options here. You can put this file inside the vault, in some folder inside the vault for people to access, or you can put this file outside of the vault. Now, one of the big benefits of this is a lot of people have ERP, MRP type system that work in conjunction with Enterprise PDM, and they want the PDFs to reside in their ERP, MRP system. So what you would see here is they want to output this file to some specific server folder that their ERP or MRP tool can reference. If you wanted to do that, that's absolutely fine. You have to just make sure that you use a UNC path here. And by UNC path, I mean it doesn't have a drive letter. Normally you may see a mapped drive, call it the H drive, and you're going to put it in the PDFs folder. This will not work unless every computer that can possibly execute the task has the H drive mapped in exactly the same way. A lot of times that's hard to find, so if you use a UNC path, which is going to actually include the server name, then you're going to be a lot more likely to have proper access. So in our case, you know, we could give it the server name right there, and then it could be the PDFs folder, and that will allow you to get to the path outside the vault that you need to get to. In my case, I'm going to store these PDFs inside the vault, and I actually want to store them in the manufacturing folder. Maybe the PDF is the viewable that our manufacturing guys use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the special variables over here on the right-hand side. The first thing is that I want it to go to the root of the vault. Okay, I want it to find the very beginning of my vault, and then I'm going to browse down through that. And if I were to bring up my vault view just to show you what the structure looks like, we've got the root of the vault, and then we've got a bunch of main level, top level folders, and one of those happens to be the manufacturing folder. If we browse into that manufacturing folder, you can see there's a bunch of PDFs in there already. So I don't really have to worry about any subfolders, but if I had subfolders, I'd want to make sure I understood all those mappings. While I'm in here, I'm going to delete one of these PDFs just so that we can recreate it and show you how this PDF generation tool works. Okay, so really all I needed to go is top level vault manufacturing folder. So we can just put a slash in here, manufacturing, and that's going to go find the manufacturing folder. I'm going to give it another slash, and then I have to choose the name of this PDF. Now it makes a lot of sense for me to go through and use the same name as the source file. So if we grab source file name right here, we'll have, say it was part.sldprt, the PDF will be part.pdf. You got a lot of options on what you want to do here. Okay, a lot of people actually want the revision in the header of the PDF. So I could do something like source file name underscore, and then I could grab another special variable like source file revision. So now it would be part underscore a.pdf. Really depends on what you want to build this to. I'm going to leave it as file name and revision because that's a fairly popular way that people do it, but you can make this be whatever you want. Again, we've got a checkbox right here that says allow the user to change the output path. If you didn't have one specific output path you wanted to use every time, you could leave this selected and it will prompt the user where they want to create the PDF. I'm going to uncheck that again so that this is an unseen task. The other option that you have here is to create a secondary output file. So instead of just outputting one PDF, you could output two PDFs, maybe one to your MRP system and one into your vault. So you can do up to two per task. Okay, and then we got to deal with something down here in the bottom, which is how do we want duplicate file names to be handled? Do you want to replace the file if it's a duplicate, or do you want to create a new version if it's a duplicate? Really, it's just dependent on what you want. If you replace existing files, you're never going to have to deal with older versions. However, if you wanted to track the older versions of the PDF, you have that option as well. And then what I like to do is turn this option on that creates a reference from the destination file to the source file. It'll basically create a link between the SOLIDWORKS file and the PDF, so you know 100% for sure that PDF was generated from that SOLIDWORKS drawing. Last but not least, right here we've got where do you want the error logs to go. So it just goes into a log folder in the vault in the convert to PDF in case you had multiple tasks running. You could change that if you want to, but hopefully nothing's going to go too bad with these conversions. And then we get to permissions. Who is allowed to run this task? Now, keep in mind something very important here. This permission is only for who can run the task. So what we've done is we've set up to put the file into the manufacturing folder. Giving someone permission to run the task does not give them permission to access the manufacturing folder. So they have to have permission to access the manufacturing folder if they're going to want to run this task, and you have to give that to them separately in their group or user permission. So what I'm going to do is just grab all users and let all users run this task, make sure that everybody would have access to the manufacturing folder, which they do, and this should work just fine. Okay, two more things here, and then I've got a question that I want to come back and tackle. The next is a success notification. So you can send an email to someone if the task has launched successfully. You could choose a user, you could choose a group, or you could check mark the box that says notify the user who launched this task so that they know the task completed. And again, you've got special variables to create the message, or you can type in your own message, task completed, and put some text in there. I'm not going to send a success notification, but if you wanted to, you could. And the same thing goes with the error notification. Okay, so I got a question here. Does the link feature work when using a UNC path output folder? So if we come back to the output file details here, we're creating a reference from the destination file to the source file. That only works if the PDF or whatever you're outputting is inside the vault. So if you are outputting this PDF outside the vault, there's absolutely no way for the vault to put a link between those two files. So This definitely only works if you're outputting a file into your enterprise PDM vault. Okay, so we've gone through here. We've done pretty good. We've got this set up. I like the way it's looking right now. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to go off and try it. Now, you remember that we put in a menu command in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, oh, wrong vault. I'm going to go into our vault, and I'm just going to grab a drawing. So I've got a drawing here that I use for a lot of different stuff. And I'm going to go just chuck that into my engineering folder. Okay, so if we come into this engineering folder, I'm going to just paste that drawing out. Theoretically, what I should see, I'm going to get this drawing checked in. Okay, if I right-click on this drawing, I should see Convert to PDF, which I do. So if I take this Convert to PDF and I run it now, I'm going to expect to see SOLIDWORKS flash in the background because it's going to open SOLIDWORKS, it's going to generate the PDF, it's going to close. You can see SOLIDWORKS opening in the background. No screens are popping up asking me for certain things, although I am getting this little like weird FeatureWorks error, so I'm just going to ignore that. But nothing popped me up asking me what do I want to name this, where do I want to put it, because we set all that stuff up before. And what I'm expecting to see now is that SW301830 get dropped into the manufacturing folder. So it's not in here yet. Sometimes it takes a minute or two. You see it got dropped in. Now it says local file. It's going to go through the check-in process. It's going to add this file to the vault. And all that stuff is going to happen in the background so that you as the user don't have to worry about it. Okay? So we've got that happen. Really easy. Everything looks good there. If I refresh that, you can see it's been added to the vault now. It's in the draft state. And if you look at the data card, the description came across, and had the SOLIDWORKS file had a revision, the revision would have come across onto the data card as well. We didn't have a rev yet on that drawing file, so that's why it didn't come across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. You notice that it's got an _.pdf as well, again, because we were missing the revision on this drawing. There's no rev there, so there's nothing to put in the file name. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to show you another way that we can activate the task. So doing it from the right-click menu is a really great way to do it, but we can also script it to be a part of our workflow. Before I do that, let me just answer two more questions that came up that are relevant. The first question is, does the right-click menu item pop up for a multiple selection, many files at once? Let's just go and take a look at that. I believe that it does. So if I were to select quite a few SOLIDWORKS files here, I could right-click, convert to PDF, and it will run through and it will convert to PDF each of those files. So you could do this for a whole bunch of drawings. It's obviously going to take longer because SOLIDWORKS is going to have to open and close in the background for every single file you've selected, but it will go through and it'll do that for multiple files. Okay, the next question that I have is, how do I specify a non-existing destination subfolder based on the first 4 letters of the PDF file name? So, that's actually a good question. If we come in and we look at the definition of this task and I look at output file details, I had to type in the manufacturing folder. And the question is, could I create subfolders on the fly based on the first 4-letter name of the PDF? The answer is that I can't. I could create a subfolder based on the name of the PDF, right? Because I'm looking at the special values that I have, okay? So these are the special values that I can access. The file's name, the file's extension, the config name, the source folder path. Any of these are available to create a subfolder on the fly, but if you had something very specific like the first 4 letters of the file name and that's it, you're definitely not going to be able to create a subfolder based upon that. That would have to be a manual action. Okay, so let's go back out of this. We've got our convert to PDF. We've got it working through a menu selection right now. But really what I'd like to happen is when this drawing gets approved, when it gets approved and it gets stamped a revision, that's when I want a PDF to get created. That way I know that my PDF is always a PDF of the released version of the file. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come and I'm going to take my menu command out, because I don't want users to be creating PDFs of files that aren't released. I want this completely controlled within the workflow. Now these don't have to be mutually exclusive. You could have a menu command and have it controlled in the workflow. For this particular example though, I want it only controlled by the workflow. So that looks good. And we're going to go into our workflow now, and we're going to make a very simple change. So if I bring up my workflow, you can see here that I've got a fairly simplistic workflow where my engineers will take a file and draft. They're going to submit it for engineering approval. Once it gets engineering approval, it gets submitted for document control approval. And once doc control approves it, it gets released for manufacturing, and that's when a revision gets stamped to it. So when it gets released for manufacturing and a rev gets stamped to it is when I want the task to execute. So we do this by setting up the transition properties. We click on the little button. We can see all our transition actions that happen to be going on here right now. And so if I look through this, I've got a whole bunch of things happening. I'm changing a watermark. I'm setting some information on the SOLIDWORKS file. I'm setting a revision variable. I'm bumping the revision. I'm putting some data out to an ERP system. And what I also want to do is add a new action that's going to create this task. So we hit the new button. Okay, the description is going to be convert to PDF. And then what do we want to do? The type of this action is going to be to execute a task. It's going to ask us which task we want to execute, which is going to be convert to PDF. It's going to use all those settings that we've already chosen in the task. And so when this thing runs through the workflow, it's actually going to create PDFs. Now there's one more thing that I want to do, so I'm going to bring that task definition screen back up. This is inside the transition. I'm going to say that I want to only run it for SLD DRW files. What I don't want is to get a bunch of PDFs of part files and assembly files, because those don't really help me out at all. I really only want PDFs of the drawing files. So I can set that criteria up right here, and now we're only going to get PDFs of our SOLIDWORKS drawings. Okay, so that's going to go through. That all gets set up. I'm going to save my workflow now. And to make sure that this works, I'm going to go ahead and pass everything through the workflow. Now, I'm logged in as the admin right now, just for ease of use so that I don't have to log in and log out a bajillion times. But in a normal world, you would be logging in, logging out as different people as you were doing these actions. So I'm going to take the SOLIDWORKS file that's in the draft state. I'm going to submit it for engineering approval. We'll put a little comment there, please review. Hit OK. That moves into the pending engineering approval state. Notice that I've got a description on the data card, but no revision yet. The other thing I should point out, so that you know this PDF is being generated live, is that on the drawing right now, if you look in the revision field, it's blank. And if you look in the approver and the approved date field, it's also blank. I'm going to have Enterprise PDM fill all that in for me, as well as remove this for reference only watermark. I've done a webinar already on how that works, so if you wanted to see how to go set that up, you can look at some of our old recorded webinars and it's on there. But I'm just going to take this thing now, and I'm going to say that it's approved by engineering. Okay, engineering approves. That's going to go and it's going to send it off to pending document control approval. Again, remember, I'm logged in as admin. Normally this would be multiple users interacting with the software here. And so now as doc control, we're going to come in and release this thing for manufacturing. Put a little note in there again, good to manufacture. It's going to ask me for my password since I have that double authentication turned on, really good for FDA type stuff. And what we're going to see right now, oops, I want to make sure I have the right password put in there. Okay, so it's going to go through. Well, you know what? I must have gone in there for whatever reason and turned on that turned on that little output. Let's just check. I always do these webinars on the fly because everybody makes mistakes, including me, and I like you guys to see that not everything happens perfectly. But while we were in that task, we must have gone through here. Yep, I turned that allow user to change output path back on. So just make sure if that was unchecked, you wouldn't see this come up. But if you wanted the user to be able to pick a name, they could do that. Jay, that question that you asked, this would be a really good way to create a subfolder right now, because I could come in as a user, say this is going to go into subfolder ABC, add that to my path, and let it move forward. So we'll hit OK on that. You'll see the preview of the drawing has updated. The watermark's gone. The rev field and the checker and approver dates have filled in. And we should see, again, SOLIDWORKS pop up in the background. It's going to create that PDF, and it's going to place it into the folder. For whatever reason, I keep getting this FeatureWorks error. It's not affecting anything. But if we go back and we look now, it should be creating a folder inside the manufacturing. Okay, so manufacturing. I have my ABC folder. And in that ABC folder, I should have that PDF once it all gets added. You see the folder's gray right now. It hasn't quite been added to the vault yet. So just waiting. Sometimes that takes a couple minutes. But that's how that happens, right? And so if we go through and we look back at the engineering folder, that drawing actually got a rev added to the data card as well. So all that information gets transferred across to our PDF. Okay. Now, this I've all done. I've all done this around creating a PDF. Okay, but it works for any file that SOLIDWORKS can create. So it can create a step file. It can create an IGES file. It can create an eDrawings file. Anything that's available in the SOLIDWORKS file save, you're going to be able to create. You can also do a print task. So when these drawings get approved, send them to our printer and print them out. That task is available to you as well. And it gets set up very much the same way. You're just choosing printers instead of output destinations and stuff like that.